All right, team. So where we left things at in the previous lecture is that we already have a controlled component, and right now the next steps are going to be to work on the onChange and work on the onSubmit. Let me check my notes once again, but I want this to at least we want to at least finish the happy path before we go on to dealing with whatever errors we might have. Okay, cool. So let's work on the onChange first, and let's make sure that we can take any changes that we need to take. All right, so we're going to create our onChange function. And by the way, I'm hoping that you guys were able to take the challenge that I left you in the last lecture and actually go and finish this on your own. And I hope that you were able to at least submit the complete the happy path, which was to submit this to the server and actually go to MySQL and see that it's actually in fact there in the right project. By the way, my Java server is running right now. My SQL database is up and running. So if this works, we're gonna see this in our database. Okay, so we already know about this. The target. Again, we're working on our onChange function here. And if you don't remember what this is, go to a previous lecture and brush up. I think we're already at a point where we want to again move a little faster. And then we need to make sure that we bind this onChange to all the input fields. Okay, so we have the summary, onChange, this dot onChange, and then I'm just gonna copy and paste this, and carefully but without delay binding this to each of our input fields. Okay, and the last one is status. Perfect. I think we're all done here. And then if you remember correctly, and I know that some of you are actually done with this and I'm just watching this for kicks and just to compare your code, then we need to bind this at the constructor level. Okay, so with this in place, we should be able to now start typing stuff in our function. Sorry, in our form. You can pick a date as a due date. We can select a priority, and we can do in progress. Perfect. This is working, but we cannot submit it yet. All right. So the next step, obviously, is to start working on our submit function. And the first thing that we're going to do with our submit function, by the way, is that we're just going to console log the object, make sure that we're getting all the everything that we need out of it, and then of course we're gonna go ahead and submit the whole thing. Okay, so on submit, and we pass it the event parameter here. Then obviously we want to prevent the default action or default behavior, and then we want to const the new task. Okay, cool. And then we're just gonna literally grab everything that we're passing here. Remember the ID, the project identifier that we're getting from the path when we submit it to the server, so we don't need to put that in our current state. All right, so here I'm sure you guys are pretty familiar with what I'm doing here. So I'm just gonna move this dot state, and then at this point we can just do summary here. We do acceptance criteria right over here, and you guys know exactly where this is going. Never rush to a point that it might delay you in the future. Okay. Then we're going to console log for now before we send it back to our server. To new task. Perfect. Okay. And then we have to bind our form All this we have done before, and this was explained before, so you guys should know what is going on right now. And then we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to bind the onSubmit. Okay. And let's see. We're just going to make sure that we are that everything is coming, that the form is working properly before we try and send data to the server. That's why I'm doing it right now. Okay. Because it could be that we have an error in the form, and when you do this, let's say mid step, then you are going to know whether or not, you're missing any name attributes where, that you have difference between the name attribute and the attribute in state and whatnot. Okay. So this is why I like doing this better. Acceptance. We're going to set up a due date. We're going to actually pick a priority, which is going to be medium. And then we're going to pick it into do. We're going to test picking one, and then we're going to test actually with the defaults. Okay, so this is looking good, I think. Medium, in progress, acceptance, and the date. Perfect. Now let's try and do one with actually, why don't I just refresh this, and new task, acceptance, the due date, and then I'm going to leave this to blank or untouched to see if we can grab the preset values. Okay, the default values, that's what I meant. Okay, acceptance status is blank, and we know that when we pass it blank, it's just gonna go to do. The priority is 0, which we know when it's 0, it's just gonna put it on 3 and the date. Okay, so this is looking really good. All right, so we might be almost ready to go and send this to our backend. Okay, so let's go back to our code. I just want to go all the way down here just to make sure that this is wired up properly. So it's connected. The AddProjectTask function is here. Everything is here. So that's why we can just come back all the way here, delete this. And by the way, before I even continue, I'm just gonna go back to the dashboard. I am going to the project board of test 1. I am going to go to the create project task of test 1, right? And I am going to go to the database, and I am going to make sure that everything is there, just so you guys know that this is not staged in any way, shape, or form. I know that you guys trust me. It's just that it's good to be well-rounded with these things. And we have, for instance, test 1. This is one that I created when I was monkeying with this, but I'm just gonna call this something else that let us know that this is actually coming from React. Okay, so now that we know that that's all in place, I'm just waiting for us to finish this up. By the way, if this is successful, this is where I'm gonna leave the video at, and then in the next one we're going to work on handling errors and all that fun stuff. Okay, but for now, let's just make sure that this actually works. Okay, so before we do anything, let me go to our backlog actions and get a refresh on what parameters this function is actually expecting. It is expecting the backlog ID. It is expecting the project task, and it is expecting the history. Cool. Okay, so we're gonna do this dot props dot add project task, and then in to our function we're gonna pass it the backlog ID, which is nothing more than this dot state dot project identifier. Okay, basically this right here. Okay, we're literally taking that from our state. Then we're gonna pass it the new task, and then this dot props dot history. Okay, which, remember, the history prop we get because this is being rendered with React Router DOM, and React Router DOM always passes this as a prop, and it always passes this here as a prop as well. So you can always count on that when you're using React Router React Router. Sorry. All right. So with this in place, And let me make sure that I saved everything. Yep. And I'm just gonna take one quick trip to the database again and refresh the query. And there's nothing else there. And now we're going to from React acceptance, and I'm going to actually pass it all the fields. I'm going to put it high this time around, and I'm going to put it done, and I'm going to submit. Good. So it actually redirected us back to our board, to the right board, which is basically what it's wired to do if everything goes well. And then I am actually going to go to database, and we're going to refresh this together to make sure that this actually worked. And it did. Perfect. So from React, which is what we just created, and you can see that it has the right identifier, it has the right ID here, because what happened is that I actually had an ID 2 and then I erased it. And then perfect, ID 101, acceptance, all good. I'm gonna create another one because I do want to just make sure that test 2, acceptance 2, because I want to make sure that the sequence is actually working fine. And actually, you know what, I'm gonna leave the defaults here. It seemed to have worked. I am going to refresh this one more time, and perfect. See, test 4, the priority is 3, the status is in to do, which is corresponding to the algorithm that we have in the service. Acceptance criteria is all good, and everything is perfect. All right, hey guys, thank you for your trust, and I hope that you guys were able to do this on your own as well. So in the next one, we're gonna handle the errors. Okay, make sure that we're displaying the errors when we try to pass it garbage. Right now it's not doing anything, but it's failing horribly, and we don't even get the errors in Redux. And I also know that you guys know what to do here, so why don't you guys go do that, and I'll see you in a few minutes.